Ankur Nagpal, it is
What's up?
great to have you on, the 15-minute founder, and we only have 15 minutes. That's the rule.
All right. We're on the
So
clock. Let's
we're
go.
gonna jump in hot with
Yeah,
some
let's do it.
hard-hitting questions.
Let's do
But
it.
what we're really gonna try to do in this episode is unpack who you are in a short amount of time, so someone can watch this
Good
and know who
luck.
you
Good
are.
luck. Yeah.
And where I want to start is I saw something you said recently, which was that first immigration guilt hits harder the older you and your parents get. And I know you are an immigrant, but what does that mean, or what did you mean with that quote? And how did you end up in America?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the quote was first generation immigrant guilt hits harder because I moved here for college. It was always my parents' dream that, I go ahead and study in America and all of that. And it made sense. I mean, I was able to start a company, build a life I could not have anywhere else. But it's sort of the ultimate trade off my parents had to make, right? In order for me to have a better life, they had to like sacrifice seeing their son. And now my parents live a 14-hour flight away. And as a result, I'm not able to almost spend as much time with them. But yeah, this hit, I mean, they were just staying with me for 6 weeks. And as I was saying bye to them, I may not see them again for like 4, 5, 6 months. And that sort of guilt of like, wow, my parents sacrificed everything so I have a better life. But in return, they don't get to spend as much time with me. It's kind of sad.
And I think something you mentioned, my parents actually immigrated here when I was 6 years old. They're from India.
Yep.
I was born in England with my brothers, lost the
Yeah.
accent, but moved here when I was 6. And I think something you said, which is you moving here, maybe wasn't the reason why you were able to start a business, but it was a big portion why. And being in America allowed you to do that. Do you ever feel like you had to make a trade off between going after career, going after business versus spending more time with your family? And would you say that America made it possible for you to start the business?
I would say I undoubtedly could not have built what I have built in any other country. And that's why I'm so grateful to America. Sometimes I do criticize America. I'm like, oh, why is an immigration policy more open and all of that? But what underlines it is a sense of gratitude because I could not have done what I have done anywhere else. Growing up, or at least like building my business, I never thought about it. It's only frankly after selling my business and reflecting and seeing my parents get older that I'm like, like I do want to spend more time with them. And frankly, I have constructed my life in a way now where I still end up seeing them, 4 or 5 times a year, which is more than a lot of my friends who have parents much closer.
You and might come off very humble about
Yeah.
this, but you did the hardest thing for any person starting a business was not only to start the business, but you got to an exit, and it was a 9-figure exit. You
Yep.
got to an exit. It's been described that starting a business is like chewing glass,
Yeah.
and then you start to enjoy the taste of your own
Yeah.
blood. And what you did was after this, when you
Yeah.
probably could have done anything you wanted
Yeah.
on earth, but you decided I'm going to chew glass and
Yeah.
hopefully like the taste of my own blood again. I know that's a bit morbid, but
Yeah.
why did you decide to, after reaching an exit with Teachable, decide to do out of everything you
Yeah.
could do, get in the trenches and start Ocho, a new business
Yep.
now?
So there was a big time in between. By the time I sold my company, stopped working there, I'm like, wow, I'm never going to do this again. Like, this is awful. Why would I ever do this again? And I had 18 months of like literally traveling the world. I was investing, which is when I met you, running a fund, which to me felt like a part-time job, like do a few calls every day. You're surfing in the morning. I was living a great life for 18 months. But towards the end of that journey, I started to nostalgia is such a powerful force that you remember the good times. Your brain sort of forgets all the hard times. I started to really miss the feeling of building something with people that I cared about, right? Like I felt like every other aspect of my life was amazing. Like I was in the best shape of my life. I was sleeping great. Everything was awesome. But there was some part of me that missed like the act of building, and not just the act of building, but building with a group of people. And that, slowly, like by the end of the summer, I was back. I started thinking of starting a company again. And I kept telling myself, that's crazy, don't do it. And at the end of the summer, I was supposed to go to Portugal to surf for a couple of weeks. And that was supposed to be the trip where I decided whether I really wanted to do it. But when it came time to leave, I actually found that I was more interested in sitting behind my computer and building this business. And that's when I knew, I gotta do it again.
I've heard a saying that first-time founders focus on product, second-time founders focus on distribution. But as a second-time or serial founder now, what is the biggest thing that you are doing differently after the war wounds, this war stories, the scar tissue from the first experience?
So the biggest scar tissue I have is honestly, running a company kind of sucks after 50 or 60 people. So right now I'm just fighting as hard as possible to keep the company as small for as long as possible. So that's a big sort of change. And this time I have a lot less ego involved. So if a time comes where I'm no longer enjoying what I'm doing, or if the company's better served with an outside CEO, I would step away. the first time around, you have so much ego attached. You're like, this is my company. How can anyone else run it? So that's one big lesson. The other lesson is, ironically, I think I'm already always have been a distribution focused founder. This time I'm actually spending much more time on product. We've intentionally decided we're spending $0 on marketing. I'm not like, we're growing, 15, 20, 25% month on month, but the numbers are still pretty small. But right now I'm like, let's get our product really good and then double down on distribution. So I've actually gone the other way. But my inherent bias is, look, I've always been distribution focused. Like that's my background. So it's a little different for me than a founder that's, never thinks about distribution.
Why do companies, or why did at least you find that the experience with over 50 or 60 people sucked, or why did it get worse at that point?
It's totally possible. Like I was a bad leader or a bad CEO, and therefore it sucked, versus it being an inevitable fact that it has to. But for me, what I found is I started to spend, like I started a company because I couldn't really have a job. Like it's just, having a corporate job wasn't for me. And at that size, it started to feel like a job. Like, I started to spend all my time in meetings. And one of the things that's most exciting about running a business is you have an idea on Monday, you can do it on Tuesday or Wednesday. But at that point, everything grinded to a halt where you want to do something cool. Now let's have a meeting to figure out how to do the thing. And I'm spending all my time now convincing people to do the thing that has to be done. And again, it's totally possible it's my mistake. Like I didn't set the company up correctly or didn't have the right people, but it definitely became a lot less fun after, I don't know whether it's 50 or 60 or 70, somewhere in that range.
And when you say you're a naturally distribution focused founder, and you also said spending $0 on marketing, what are you doing for marketing then? How are you acquiring customers? And what do you think, especially spending some time as an investor, what does it mean, or what do you see when someone is more of a distribution focused founder or founding team versus a product focused team?
So I don't think I'm good at a whole lot, but one of the things I've always spent my career at is like the intersection of like product and marketing growth for like, even when I was 20 years old, I built Facebook apps that reached millions of people. So that's always been my background at Teachable. I ran the growth team for, until CEO stuff became too much. So that's always been my background. It's always been my bias. For Ocho this time, I mean, what we're doing right now, the numbers are just small. It's not that hard to grow. We can grow, like we're at, 15, 16,000 in monthly recurring revenue. So we add $4,000 in monthly recurring revenue. That's 25% month on month growth. So the numbers are still pretty small. Right now, we're able to grow largely just through partnerships with creators, my own network. Twitter is a big source for us. So we're able to kind of like just brute force it for now. And that's fine for now. But what we're trying to see is the product itself bringing in new people. Like what I'm waiting to see is like, is every successful happy customer bringing in their friends, which we're not at yet. And that's sort of the point I want to get to before dialing up paid and stuff. In a lot of ways, I'm basically a lot more patient. Like now it's 11 months in, and I'm like, I'm fine if it takes us 2 years to get to a point of like the product working really, really well, and then we'll double down on it.
I can tell just by some of these answers and even your reflection about whether or not you were the root cause, or
Yep.
if inevitably companies reach a stage, that you are very self-aware. I guess that self-awareness has come from going through the highs and lows and probably reflection. So I want to ask you a question about really what drives you using this self-awareness.
Yeah.
It's said that at the end of the day, we all have a certain couple of core drivers that
Yep.
really drive our daily
Yep.
decisions. And I'll give you 4.
Yep.
Money, power, pleasure, or fame. And typically, many of these or multiple of those
Yep.
factors will be a driver. But if you really boil it down and ask why enough times, there's typically one of those, which is the largest driving force for daily decisions or what we do. So if I had to put you on the spot here, if you had to pick between money, power, pleasure, and fame, which of those 4 idols, if you will, is the major driver for you?
I think it's undoubtedly at this point pleasure. Like it's the things that like there's so many trade-offs in my life right now I will not make if it makes my life less valuable. Even something like the kind of culture I want to keep. Like if someone is going to be a great performer, but like I don't want to spend time with them every day, I'm not going to do it. Like even decisions like whether to build a company in person or not, I chose what adds most value to my life, which is being surrounded with people. I think initially money is a powerful motivator, but then, check that box with Teachable. It literally does not make any difference to my life at this point. So it's not that. So I would say between those 4, it would be probably pleasure, but what it is that keeps me happy, what it is that keeps me motivated, the framework I have is like, I found 4 things make a big difference in my day-to-day happiness. 1 is like very simple, just spending time outdoors. 2 is like physical motion, activity, exercise. I feel most at peace when in motion. 3rd thing is like meaningful relationships. It's not about quantity of people, but just being able to like have a few relationships I can count on. And 4th is like work with purpose. And that was the one that was missing from my life. And that's sort of what led me to start this.
If you could actually zoom out, I'm always fascinated about how people construct their days. And
Yep.
typically, the day starts when
Yeah.
you wake up too. So I have to ask, I know people are curious, what does the morning routine look like? When you wake up in an ideal day, in this perfect day, designed or optimized for
Yeah.
pleasure, what do you like to do? And
I
what
just
does the
start with
first few
my
hours look
cold
like?
plunge and athletic greens. No, I'm just kidding. I don't do any of that shit. Mine is it's pretty simple. I mean, like roughly like first thing I do is like I get outside. I typically always get coffee from outside because I like the activity of that. And I call my parents. I don't talk to them every day, but like typically that walk to coffee and back is when I will try and say hi to them. Then I'll work out. Workout is different every day, but workouts are typically the thing I like to do in the morning. Get to the office. Again, we have an office with a team I really like working with. So it's actually very enjoyable to go in and see the same people every single day. And then most evenings, because I live in New York City, like there's some social stuff happening kind of every evening. So I stay busy maybe 5 or 6 nights a week. I'm doing something.
What type of structure or environment do you find yourself most productive in? And over the course of your career so far, how have you changed maybe the way you structure your environment or what you do to be most productive?
I remember I tried after COVID happened and we were given flexibility to not go to the office. I tried the whole like digital nomad thing. It absolutely did not work for me. It was like impossible to get deep shit done. So I do find an office helps a lot. I find just like the forcing factor of being around people that care about the same problems to be very motivating to me personally. Some people can kind of work in a vacuum where they're motivated inherently. For me, like having people that share the same sense of purpose is super motivating. So that helps a lot. In terms of work, it's been so long since I've ever done deep work. Like I basically have no deep work. Like as a founder CEO, you're not really doing deep work. I mean, the last time I did deep work was when I like probably built the first version of the Teachable app, which was 7 years ago. So right now it's largely interrupt driven, but I kind of lean into it with working in I don't know 60, 120 minute segments, and then I'll like have a call when I'll do while walking. Like I probably walk 20,000 steps a day, so I do a lot of my communication is when I'm walking.
You maybe said something which you could say is a hot take, but
Yeah.
definitely a divisive take, which is that, hey, can remote work versus in person? But I think I like your candor around it, which is, hey, optimize for what you want and the people
Optimize for
around
what
you
you
want.
want, right? It also depends on your life. Like I bet if I, had 3 children, I would like feel very differently. But, being single, living in New York City, like, yeah, it's like fun to go into an office and be around people who are in a similar life stage as you. So I don't think one is better than the other. Like there totally could come a time in my life where I'm like, remote work works better for me.
What important truth do you believe in that many other people might not? This is a version of the contrarian question, but what do you believe that others just disagree with you on when it comes to startups?
Well, I can start with like very tactical takes and then sort of zoom out. But very, very tactically, I think a lot of things when it comes to startups create the illusion of work and activity. And there are very few things that meaningfully move the dial. For instance, one of the hills I'm willing to die on is most startups should not be A/B testing, right? Like I feel like every single product manager, every single startup goes through this phase of like, oh, let me like, try to optimize the copy and like run like it really doesn't matter. Like in the early days, you need to move the dial so significantly. It's not about getting a 10%, 20% improvement, from somewhere. You have to like literally take shots from that are just much much bigger in nature. Another thing is I think there's no substitute to like forming deep relationships with your customers. Like I think all the companies I've known that have done very well, like even the Teachable days, like the fact is we got to know our customers very well personally, and that was something we were able to scale up and ultimately differentiated us from the rest.
What did that actually look like in practice, meeting or getting to know a customer on a deep level versus a surface level Zoom where you say hi for 15 minutes?
So all of our customers at Teachable, we had a certain segment of customers that in turn were very important because they were creators and in their audience were hundreds of other future customers for us. So for people like that, we ended up just honestly just becoming friends with them, which sounds a little bit over the top, but no, we would like actually go out with them. They were family people. We knew their family. If there were people who like to go out, we like literally went to the bars with them. Like we were in very very close with our customers, and I think when things got tough, that really made a difference in terms of who you could count on, and like those relationships just compounded in life. I mean, same with some of our investors. Multiple people that were our investors are now amongst my close friends since we've at this point had an 8-9 year relationship and kind of seen each person develop through that.
You've spent some time now as a founder
Mhm.
and as an investor, and now as a founder again.
Yep.
Having been in both seats, what would you say is the biggest misconception founders have about investors and then investors have about founders?
So again, like I know I've been in both seats, but like I've always been a founder. Like the I've never even like I always feel kind of weird inside to self-identify as an investor. I guess I did invest. I mean, investing to me, and it's possible that again, like other investors will disagree, but it kind of felt like bullshit. Like it felt like yes, it was fun, it was rewarding, and it's like you get to like see the future develop, but it's not a full-time job. Like maybe it's a full-time job if you're like 50 years old and kind of want to chill. As a founder, it's like not even remotely the same. You're just sitting around handing people money. Yes, you're giving them advice and stuff, but you're not in the trenches. Like you're not doing, it felt to me like you're doing maybe 1 to 2% of the work, and you get more than 1 to 2% of the reward. So yeah, the whole trade-off felt kind of weird. I think a lot of investors, and I noticed this especially as an investor, need to be a little bit more humble. Like if you haven't actually done the job, it's very easy to kind of, sit back and tell other people how they should be running something. So I think a lot of investors who have not been founders lack a little bit of empathy of like actually knowing what it's like to go through that.
There's recently this poll that was asked, if you ask people what percentage of the population are you in when it comes to being a good driver, 93% of people will say they're in the top 50%.
Yeah.
So everyone overestimates how good they are at what they do.
Yeah.
I think in any profession, but let's even say in venture capital and investors, you'd probably say a similar distribution where more people than 50% think they're in the top half. As a investor or as a founder, multiple founder, what tactically are the things that the best investors do? From your experience or things you try to do?
So I generally think most investors would be better off like wiring quickly, being very responsive, and getting out of the way. Like I think that would already make you better than the median investor. Honestly, all of our investors at Teachable were awesome. But what they did is they basically let me run the company the way I wanted to. When I needed something, they were there for support. And yeah, they were most responsive when I needed them, but they were otherwise willing to stay out of the way. And to me, that was like super, super valuable. There's so many investors that try and be helpful, but it's just so hard with such limited context to be able to tell a company what to do or whatever.
To wrap up, I do want to ask for some more tactical advice, but more from the personal side. First thing is when it comes to relationships, what's the biggest piece of relationship advice you would give to your 20-year-old self?
So I'm generally as a person very conflict averse, and it's something that I've gotten a lot better at, but just like understanding that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is to be not kind. And that's something that like I'm still learning because I struggle with. I will like honestly just, kind of like beat around the bush and not be very clear in communication. So it's advice that I'm sharing, but it's also advice I frequently like repeat to myself because it's something I've struggled with. I just like whenever it's people I love, I like just avoid conflict and I kind of want to see everyone happy. And that's a rough thing to have as a CEO where your job very often is, trying to have the hard conversations.
I learned of a concept actually recently. It's called the one call. But if you ask someone, hey, what's the one call you need to make right now? Everyone's like, oh crap, yeah, I know what I need to do. Like there's that one phone call you need to make.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it is for the best, but you put it off for reasons as in, I don't want to make the person feel bad or it's going to be a hard convo. But ultimately, what you fear most is what you most need to do.
Yep.
Have you improved at that? You said you're trying to improve, or is there any, I hate using the word hack, but have there been any ways you've been able to improve or force yourself to have those
The
convos?
hack has literally been like 5, 6, 7 years of hard won lessons. Like so many of these things, I feel like like I do believe people get better at running companies and get better at most things because I've seen it myself. I mean, even like without, consciously trying to improve, like you adapt and you learn just by basically experiencing 100 different variants of it over 5 years, and your brain sort of pattern matches. Okay, I did this and this went well. So honestly, the hack has been just like real hard won experience. One way, at least in a professional context, of reframing it is very often when you think you don't want to be unkind to one person by sort of protecting them or not doing what you have to do, you're implicitly being unkind to everyone else. So it's just sometimes, more apparent when you're like, oh, I don't want to have a hard conversation with this one person. You may not understand how it might be affecting everyone else. And by not having that conversation, in your perception of yourself trying to be kind, you're actually being unkind to everyone else.
Anytime there's something I don't want to do now, I tell myself, you don't have to, you get to. And that can apply for a really shitty situation at work where a year or two ago, you wouldn't have imagined being in this spot. And now you're here, you get to
Yep.
exercise, whatever it might be. Hey, you're able
Yeah,
bodied, you can walk
absolutely.
around, etc. So I love those types of reframings. The first time I met you was actually through a Twitter DM.
Yeah.
And I think we were first talking about LLCs, maybe had some questions
Yeah.
about Teachable, and it started there and then ended up going to a conversation where chatted more about Doula, formerly Start Pack, and now we have the chance to work together.
Yep.
But when I look back, I thought, why did I decide to send the DM in the first place? There's always that fear of hitting send, sending the message. What if someone doesn't respond? And now something I'm so bullish on because I see it every day when
Yeah.
people are on the fence of starting a company is fast forwarding and thinking, what would I regret looking forward on my deathbed? And
Yeah.
if you do that, it makes it very easy sometimes to think, yeah, I get a bonus coming up in a quarter, but then I'm just stuck on that handcuff or
Yeah.
the hamster treadmill. I'm going to try starting this business or writing this book, whatever it might be. Is there a time or moment when you shot your shot and you had that asymmetric upside? Is there anything that jumps out?
I remember for work, one of the like back in the day, one of the moments that defined us as a company is we didn't, we'd been around for a while. Company was still pretty small. We didn't have any marquee customers or creators. And I remember like on our list of people to partner with was this guy named Pat Flynn. He had like this massive, massive podcast at the time, Smart Passive Income. And I remember like, trying to reach out a few times and nothing ever worked. Then I saw he was speaking at a conference in North Carolina. And I remember emailing him saying, hey, Pat, I'm going to be at this conference, like would love to meet up. And it's probably the second or third attempt. And he finally replied. And of course, I had no plans of going to this conference, right? The whole thing was just like me like giving it a shot. And as soon as he replied, I remember like bought a flight out the next day, didn't even buy tickets to the conference, like literally flew to Charlotte for a coffee meeting at a Starbucks with Pat, flew back that afternoon for my friend and co-founder's like wedding. It was all the same day. Ended up closing him as a customer. He became one of our biggest partners, and like it was turned out to be a very, very pivotal moment for us.
All right, I think that might just be the new hack, if you will, or
Yeah.
that might be the new
Yeah.
trick that I have to try, but other founders
Yeah,
have to
just
try
do
to
it.
get
Tell
that
just
dream
tell people
partner.
you're going to conferences you're not really at, and then if they say yes, book a flight.
What's the biggest thing you're looking forward to with Ocho in the next 10 years?
In a lot of ways, like with Teachable, I was a little bit angsty, right? I was like, I wanted to have this win. I wanted to like the company to go a certain way. With Ocho, I want this to be a company I can build for the rest of my life. And if it means like, being more patient year one, year two, year three, that's totally fine. So a lot of things here I'm just doing differently because I want this to be sort of a canvas for my life's work. So it does lead to like in some ways a relaxation of pressure. And also I just think when you're a little bit older, having done this, you just get better at managing yourself and your emotions. So yeah, it's been great so far.
Sometimes people say you should separate the work or the outcome from yourself. Do you think that you should separate them, or do you think that the two are intertwined? Own it,
Yep.
make the company the canvas, you feed the company
Yeah,
feeds you.
I hate that shit, or at least I don't think I am the right like I like a lot of people are like, oh, you want to have work life balance or whatever, and I'm not saying I don't even think I work particularly hard, but I like strive to integrate my work in life. Like to me, a good life is where I struggle to be like, is this work? Is this my life? Like that is like it's just what feels most natural to me. The idea of like creating these two separate parts that don't interact is like the most unnatural thing in the world. Like if I'm playing a sport with a founder I invested in, is that work? Is that life? I don't know. And that's the good part, right? That's how I want to live my life.
That's a great way to wrap up. And for everyone listening, send the DM. We probably wouldn't be having this
Yeah.
conversation if I didn't. And thanks, Ankur.
Thanks for having me.
Sweet. Thanks, man.
Sure. It's fun.
I didn't know the Pat Flynn story.
Oh yeah, it was sick.